Imagine being a journalist sitting at your desk on an ordinary afternoon when your phone buzzes, a connection request on an encrypted messaging app from what appears to be the National Security Advisor of the United States. You accept it. 2 days later, you are not just reading about American military plans. You are inside them, in real time, hours before bombs start falling on another country. That is not the opening of a political thriller. That is exactly what happened, and what it revealed about the people currently running the most powerful government on earth should concern every single person watching this. In March 2025, Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic magazine, one of America's most respected publications, received an unexpected signal connection request apparently from Mike Waltz, the White House National Security Advisor. Goldberg, a veteran journalist who has spent decades covering governments and wars, accepted. Days later, he found himself silently reading a group chat labeled Houthi PC Small Group. In that chat were not just staffers or low-level aides. There was the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, the CIA Director, John Ratcliffe, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, senior White House officials and top national security figures, 18 members in total, and one journalist who no one knew was there. What they discussed was not a scheduling conflict or a policy debate. They were mapping out a live military strike operation against Houthi rebel targets in Yemen, specific targets, weapon systems, timing of attacks, the sequence of F-18 strike aircraft, MQ-9 Reaper drones, and Tomahawk cruise missiles, real-time battlefield updates as the operation unfolded, and hours after that conversation, the United States military began bombing Yemen. To understand why this matters so deeply, you need to step back and think about what this situation actually represents, not just politically, but structurally. The United States government has entire institutions built around one core principle: that sensitive military information must be protected above all else. The Espionage Act, classification systems, secure government communication networks, physical situation rooms, intelligence protocols, all of it exists because when the wrong people get access to military operational details, people die. American service members, allied forces, and civilians can all lose their lives if an enemy discovers strike timing, target locations, or weapons being deployed before those weapons arrive. The entire system is designed with one lesson burned into it from decades of painful experience. Operational security is not optional. It is sacred. And here, in what may be one of the most stunning security lapses in modern American history, the highest national security officials in the country were coordinating a live military operation on a consumer messaging application, one that is not government approved for classified communications, and accidentally let a journalist sit in on the entire thing. The question that demands an honest answer is this: how does something like this happen? The simple answer is carelessness. Mike Waltz, attempting to add a colleague to the group, apparently sent the invitation to the wrong contact. One wrong tap on a phone screen. That is all it took to expose a military operation to a civilian journalist. But the deeper answer is something far more troubling. This incident did not occur in isolation. Reports emerged almost immediately that Waltz had been running multiple Signal group chats with cabinet members on a wide range of sensitive national security topics: Ukraine, China, Gaza, Africa, Somalia, and European policy. This was apparently a routine practice, which means this was not a one-time accident. This was a systemic pattern of conducting serious government business on an unofficial, unclassified platform, and the accident was simply the moment that pattern became visible. And think about what that means. These conversations, if conducted properly, would have taken place on classified government systems, inside secure facilities, with full logging and legal preservation of records. Federal law requires official government communications to be preserved. Signal, by design, can be set to delete messages automatically. Some of these chats appear to have had disappearing message settings enabled. Critics pointed out immediately that this could constitute the destruction of federal records, a serious legal violation for people who hold the nation's highest offices. There is another dimension to this story that gets less attention but deserves serious thought. On March 13th, when Waltz added the journalist to the chat, one of the officials, Steve Witkoff, the White House special envoy, was reportedly in Moscow meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. It was not publicly confirmed whether Witkoff had his Signal-enabled device with him during those discussions. The implications of that detail are left for the viewer to consider carefully. What happened next was almost as revealing as the leak itself. When The Atlantic published its first article, the White House's immediate reaction was denial and minimization. The press secretary said it was a hoax. Then officials said no classified information was shared. Then they said the chat was not war plans. Then, when The Atlantic published the full transcript and it clearly showed strike sequencing, weapon deployment timelines, and real-time mission updates, the defense shifted again to the operation was successful, so nothing went wrong. That logic is worth pausing on, because by that reasoning, a surgeon who operates while intoxicated has done nothing wrong as long as the patient survives. The outcome does not retroactively justify the recklessness of the process. The fact that the Yemen strike succeeded does not erase the fact that a journalist watched them being planned in real time. President Trump himself, when pressed, said he did not know anything about it, and then suggested Waltz had learned a lesson. No firings, no resignations, no meaningful accountability. The defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, told reporters that nobody was texting war plans, despite a published transcript that showed the exact opposite. The Senate reacted with rare bipartisan concern. Republican senators, including the chair of the Armed Services Committee, said they were troubled and would investigate. Democratic senators were more direct. Senator Mark Warner called it obviously reckless and obviously dangerous, warning that if the Houthis had received this information in advance, they could have repositioned their defensive systems and American pilots could have been killed. Senator Ron Wyden called for resignations, beginning with the National Security Advisor and the Secretary of Defense. Both Ratcliffe and Gabbard, appearing before the Senate Intelligence Committee, insisted under oath that nothing classified had been shared. But here is the point that cuts through the political noise. Whether or not the specific details in the chat met the legal technical definition of classified is, in many ways, beside the point. Operational military information, strike timing, target identities, weapon systems, real-time battle updates does not need to be stamped top secret to cause catastrophic harm if it reaches the wrong hands. Intelligence professionals understand this at a fundamental level. These were not procedural matters. These were the kind of details that, in any other context, would end careers and potentially result in criminal prosecution. Now consider who was affected by this event and in what ways. For the American military, the damage is institutional. Soldiers and pilots who risk their lives in operations depend on the assumption that their missions are being planned and managed with the highest possible security standards. When they discover that their mission details were circulated on a consumer app with a journalist accidentally present, it erodes the foundational trust between those who plan wars and those who fight them. For American allies, the implications are quietly alarming. Every nation that shares intelligence with the United States, and there are many, now has to reassess how confidently they can provide sensitive information to Washington. If this is how the inner circle manages classified adjacent communications, what does it say about the broader information security culture inside this administration? For adversaries of the United States, and this is the part that rarely gets said plainly enough, this was a gift. Not necessarily the specific Yemen content, though that too, but the revealed knowledge that the American National Security Team conducts sensitive military coordination on commercial messaging apps in group chats that apparently no one fully monitors for membership accuracy is an intelligence asset in itself. Understanding the vulnerability of your enemy's systems is one of the oldest principles of warfare, and for the American public, the fundamental question this raises is about accountability and seriousness. The people in that chat are not mid-level bureaucrats. They are the people constitutionally and legally entrusted with the defense of the country. If this is how they handle the planning of military operations, it forces every citizen to ask a question that has no comfortable answer. What else is being handled this way? Looking forward, the consequences of this incident are still unfolding. Waltz was later reassigned from his role as National Security Advisor, moved to a position as UN Ambassador, a change that the White House framed as a promotion, but that most analysts read as a quiet removal following the scandal. The Pentagon launched an internal investigation. Congressional committees have signaled continued oversight efforts, but investigations and reshuffles do not address the deeper cultural issue this exposed. Security discipline is not enforced by investigations after the fact. It is enforced by the daily habits and standards of the people at the top. If those at the very highest levels of government treat secure communications protocols as optional bureaucratic procedures rather than life and death necessities, no investigation will change that culture. Only leadership will. The story of the Signal chat is, at its core, not really a story about a wrong number. It is a story about what happens when the people responsible for national security forget, or never truly understood, why those security protocols exist. The rules are not red tape. They are written in the experience of every intelligence failure, every leak, every operation that went wrong because the wrong person knew too much too soon. A journalist watched a military strike unfold from his phone. The bombs fell, the planes returned, the targets were destroyed. And in the halls of power, the response was, move on, nothing happened. But something did happen. And the most dangerous part is that the people who should understand that most clearly seem to be the ones most determined to pretend it did not.